want to make a map. Hi everyone. So in today's video, we're going to make a map. As I said, I want to make a map. In a lot of fantasy novels, you see at the beginning of the page or beginning of the book, they have a map. Like for Lord of the Rings, they have Middle Earth. For the Akatar series, they have the fairyland, all the kingdoms, Corinthian. It's been a very long time since I read Akatar, so I could be wrong. In Arcadia, which is the world my webcomic From Ashes takes place in, there are many unique places the characters visit, but since I'm still in the early chapters, and I'm already considering redoing those early chapters, more on that in another video, my characters have only visited one area, which is the city of Rudona. Rudona is the capital of Bergen, and Bergen is a dukedom in the human kingdom of Lullavoy. There are other kingdoms other than Lullavoy, but I don't want to spoil them yet. We will visit them in later episodes. It'll be a while, is what I'm saying. But just know Lullavoy is not the only one, which I think is already apparent since Enya's a half-elf. So I think you can already assume there are elves somewhere in the world, but I'm getting ahead of myself. We'll talk about elves when we get to that part of the story, which at the pace I'm going right now will be a long time. Ruduna is quite large. At the center is Howler Circle, which is very difficult to say. At Howler Circle is where a lot of the famous shops in Ruduna are located. Famous shops, restaurants, cafes, all those really cool places are at the center of town. There is the Winking Horse, which is a tavern and inn owned by Ada, which we met briefly in episode 3. Ada is a no-nonsense kind of woman. She's very cool. A short walk from the Winking Horse, you will find the florist shop of Petals and Blossoms. Not blossoms, blossoms with a P, where you'll find many beautiful flowers and plants. And we see the shop in episode 5, briefly, and at the beginning of episode 6. So the last part, at the time I'm filming this video, the last episode I've released is episode 6 part 1, and we don't see the full name of Petals and Blossoms, we just see this like a cut-off sign, but that is the name of the florist shop Enya visits at the end of episode 5 and beginning of episode 6. I just thought Blossom sounded cute, and kind of alliteration. The and kind of ruins it. It could be petals and petals, pan, blossom, petals, pad, pan. We'll just stick with and. There's also the Frosty Fables, owned by the soft-hearted Mr. Bernard, which we briefly meet in episode 5 when Mr. Bernard runs out of his limited edition ice cream for the Illumination Festival, and Orion, Anya's brother, is very sad about it. So Frosty Fables is the place you want to go when you want to get ice cream. Since he makes the best ice cream in Rudona, and maybe just not Rudona, maybe all of Bergen, and maybe all of Lullavoy. I haven't decided that yet, but he makes really good ice cream. There are other shops that'll be important to the story later on, but I have not introduced them yet. So we've only introduced the Winking Horse, Petals and Blossoms, and the Frosty Fables. But there is a couple more shops we will visit either soon or a little later in the story, or a lot later. And at the center of Howler Circle is a beautiful fountain with a wolf statue standing guard of the town. The wolf is a symbol of Bergen. As you can see in the knights' outfits, they have a wolf picture at the center of their outfit, and then they have a wolf on their belt buckle. I haven't actually drawn the statue yet, but I know there will be a wolf at the top. I already have it in my head. I just have to transfer what's in my head to paper or digital paper. There are other districts in Rudona. There is the Ravens district, which is home to not the most law-abiding citizens, which we will visit in later chapters of From Ashes. I've briefly mentioned them in episode 6 part 1. Other districts in Rudona include trade, agriculture, commerce, which would technically be trade, right? Trade and commerce. Fashion. I haven't actually thought about other districts because the main districts that are important are Howler Circle, Ravens District, and maybe the Agriculture District. Those are the main places you will visit in Rodona when you're reading from Ashes. Of course, also Lyron Valentine's clinic, which is who is Anya's father, and I haven't decided where his clinic will be. I had to step away to deal with work, so I'm not sure where I left off. Rodona is a large place in From Ashes, and an important one too. It's where Enya lives, it's where all the main characters meet for the first time, so there's a lot of significance in that area. And I think creating maps will just help the reader better visualize the characters' movements. So when I say Enya traveled from her house to Frosty Fables, you kind of have an idea of her route or how long it takes. Also, I just want to create a map. It's something that's been on my mind for a long time, just to kind of try creating a map because I think maps are really cool. Yeah. So how will I be creating the map? Well, digitally at first. Eventually I do want to do like a traditional map where it's like large and you have weathered paper and then you ink it. But for right now, I think digitally is more helpful and will be a little bit faster. Eventually, I would love to just create a large map and then frame it. I would have a lot of maps to frame then. So we'll be prioritizing the digital map first, and we can get started. Though I have no idea where to get started, but I think the next clip me will have figured it out, hopefully. I think the best way to start is going from center out, because I knew that, for example, Howler Circle is here. So I'm just going to put H and Howler Circle here. And so I know I'm probably going to have the winking horse here, and then I'm probably gonna have Frosty Fables here. That's just how I imagined it. I just imagined the florist to be somewhere on the left. So we're gonna put petals and blossoms, so PP. And I do imagine this as a circle, maybe not a perfect circle, but that is Howler Circle, and then we have the fountain in the center. Now the issue comes where the other regions go. So I think the best way to approach this is figure out where the forest is. So how I imagine the story going is there are other places other than Bergen. So Bergen's not the only dukedom. So I always imagine, like, if there's 4 dukedoms, like let's say we have a square and then we divide it into 4 pieces. I always imagine Bergen to be on the lower right piece, and then the other 3 can be somewhere here. That's just how I imagined it. So I'm gonna go it off that. In terms of Rodona in Bergen, I imagine it to be, if this is Bergen, I imagine Rodona to be kind of towards the east. I'm not gonna put it too east because it is east, and then like maybe 45-minute carriage ride or horse ride, you will reach Duke Bergen's house. Which is technically in Rodona, so I don't know why I put it outside, but house. So it's like a 45 minutes ride, and then this whole other area, Rodona, is different villages and towns and stuff. So Rodona is the biggest town, so it's going to take up a large part of Bergen, but seeing this bigger picture gives me an idea where the other areas will go. So if Howler Circle's in the center, I don't want to put the Ravens district so close to the east that it's close to Duke Bergen's estate. I imagine they would want to be a little farther. So I imagine them towards the west. So away from Duke Bergen's estate. And I imagine they can either be north or south. Let's draw that square again. So we have 4 dukedoms, but somewhere in here is the capital city, the royal capital. I imagine them above Bergen. That's where I imagine them. So between Bergen and this other dukedom that I haven't mentioned yet. When I'm thinking about where the Ravens district is, I'm also thinking about trade routes or information routes too. So I guess you can trade information. So I kind of imagine them northwest. So I'm going to put the Ravens district here. In the outskirts of town is where more farmland comes. This way, no agriculture. I don't imagine any farming this way. Also, this way, no agriculture. So I don't imagine agriculture to be on these areas. But I imagine agriculture to be on the west and the south, so agriculture. We also need the temple for the basilica. I imagine the temple to be somewhere not on the right because, well, that's too close to Dukeburg in the state, so I'm running out of real estate. So I would imagine them to be probably bottom center. I mean, close to Howler Circle, reasonably close. Maybe the temple is here. But also, I imagine them to be somewhat close to Ravens District. So I might actually put them here because I also imagine the Basilica to be next to the royal capital. So that is north. So I will put the temple at the top. So we have other districts. As we said, agriculture is going to be on the outskirts of town. There's probably going to be little like houses. This is not an agriculture town. I imagine it more as like a tourist town in a way. But they do have like agriculture, like small, not as big as like other regions in Bergen. On this side of the town is the forest. So if you go west, you hit the forest. Now there's these other areas that we have to consider. So I imagine the fashion district to be close to Howler Circle too. So I imagine them to be here. And of course we have to consider Anya's house. Anya's house I consider to be here, somewhere close to the Howler Circle. So she has to still be able to walk, but not close enough but not too close because it should still be a decent walk. Lyron's clinic, which is Anya's father, has to be somewhere close by because I don't imagine him working too far away. I imagine it south. I imagine it close to the agriculture district. So I'm going to put his clinic right here, actually. Lyron's clinic. And I hope I remember these initials. That is kind of how I'm going about it. I still have to consider trade, other kinds of districts. These are like the main districts. I mean, even the fashion district I wouldn't consider a main district, but it is close to town. And there are fashion areas in town, but maybe it could be like an extension. Where we have an empty area here, which I imagine, I haven't decided what can be here. I have to do some research and figure out what districts were kind of in town. There's also the question of here too. I mean, this could all be like residential area. Maybe like down here can be a residence area. It is something to consider, but this is kind of my idea so far of where everything is. It's just going to be a matter of deciding how far everything is to each other. The only thing I know is Lyron's clinic and his house will be somewhat close to each other. There also could be like a training area near a school district where students or like young people want to learn to be knights because Bergen has their own knights, and I imagine that to be there should be like areas in town where they can train. So that could be like close to Bergen Estate or like close to the road, like their road is probably somewhere here. But it is something to think about. I just have to lay it out better and probably look at other maps of areas and then figure out how everything works. I'm gonna keep brainstorming and then I'll come back when I have a better idea and we can start drafting. Guess what? I have to redo the audio or the voiceover for this time lapse because it was so staticky. So hopefully this one is okay. So this is the draft I have for the map, and obviously by the time you see this video I already have created the map. This is the draft I have. It has like the areas I will be adding to the map. There's going to be small changes. The biggest change though will be there's a path to the right of Verdona that kind of leads to the right that goes to Duke Bergen Estate. I'm going to take away that path just because there's going to be a school there, and it's kind of weird if there's a school and a path there. If there's like a path to the outside route and next to a school, I just find it a little weird. So I'm going to close off that entrance later on. Some other differences is the bottom right. That'll be fully residential. Right now it kind of looks like a garden, but it's going to be fully residential. And I'm going to add a markets district because people have to do groceries somewhere. And I think it makes sense that there's a market district where they can get like fruits, vegetables. There's going to be a butcher shop, stuff like that. I didn't include where the agriculture district, or I didn't draw it, probably because I'm just going to assume it's there on the left But yeah, but this is like a basic draft of what Redona will look like. So I started with drawing the buildings I knew would be in Redona. So for here, it's the Winking Horse, and I kind of made it look like what the picture looks like. I don't have the images, or I haven't drawn like what every building looks like. For example, Frosty Fables, Anya's house. I don't have that image, but I can try to be somewhat accurate to what the map or what I drew in the map. But the Winking Horse and the Wyvern's Tongue, I do know what it looks like. And also, it doesn't have to be like exactly like the map. You just have to know like where these areas are. So I started not only with what buildings I know will be in the story, but also at Howler's Circle, because that's like kind of a central point in the map. More like central down, but still. And I put like Frosty Fables, the Wordsmith, Petals and Blossoms into the map, so I know like where these areas are. And like when Anya at the beginning of the story goes to Petals and Blossoms, it's like she has to pass that to go to Frosty Fables and the Winking Horse from her house. And behind the Winking Horse is the temple. And the temple, I don't know if that'll be the final, what the picture will look like, but it is what's on the map. And in the back will be like where the paladins sleep, that long rectangle. And I also try to use the ellipse tool to make a garden, but I erased this very early, like pretty much almost right away. It's gonna stick around maybe like for a few minutes, but it gets erased, and I just draw in the bushes because it looks really ugly when it's like just so, I don't know what the word is. It doesn't look natural. And then it was time to do the craftsman district. So this is like where blacksmiths, jewelers, people like that work. I have Dale's shop, which is Dragon's Drove, which is a jeweler shop. Fleur's shop, which is trinkets and baubles, where it's like knickknacks, and she has like a side business, which we'll talk about in the story. And we have a Wildflowers Emporium, which is an apothecary. And that store is a little bigger than the others because he has a lot of ingredients. And as I'm working on the map, I'm also keeping in mind the sizing of every building. So, for example, I resized the Winking Horse because that has to be bigger than Anya's house because it's a tavern and an inn. So it has to be somewhat bigger. I mean, where Anya lives is where like, many like richer people live, so they would have great houses, and it could look like Pemberley, for example, into the 2005 version of Pride and Prejudice. But the Winking Horse has to be somewhat large to accommodate visitors. I also included a key on the side just to help me like keep track of what I'm including in the map. And Anya's house is in the Peacocks district. So the Peacocks district is for richer families, the wealthy. Lyron and Eloisa do pretty well in their station, so they have a pretty nice house. Not the biggest house in the Peacocks district. I do 2 bigger houses than that. And I also imagine there's more houses. It's just I can't draw every house, and you're not going to visit every house in From Ashes, but it's a good representation of what's going to be in the Peacocks district. That key on the side is very helpful, just writing down, like keeping track, because obviously I have the document of what's in Redona, but it's easy to like lose track when you're not looking at it all the time or when it's not next to you, but it being on the canvas itself is helpful. So the Ravens district is on the upper left, and that's where the Wyvern's Tongue is, and the Wyvern's Tongue is also a tavern and a brothel. But the Ravens district is not as affluent as the other districts. It's a more people of lower class, or like they don't make as much money. So later on, when I include the housing there, it's going to be large houses where multiple families live. So kind of like apartments, so it is pretty long buildings. And the school will be above the Peacocks district. And the school is also pretty big because the families will be putting their children there. So a lot of children will be there. And the school will end up also being near a park, so they can have fun at the park. In terms of the gates, or like the walls surrounding the Rodona, I put like little blocks around it. I imagine those are like towers where maybe like the guards will like look out to like make sure there's no invaders. And of course like large walls for the city. Nowadays, cities don't have large walls. It's kind of just out in the open. And I'll be erasing that entrance for the school. And the Peacock District also has like a gate. It's a gated community. Rich people. Very affluent families. So they have gates to like, it's private. So to make it private, it's more for maybe like aesthetics and to show status than it is for like safety reasons, because we have entrances on the bottom of the Peacock's District and on the left. The left kind of leads to like the upper part of Howler's District and the temple, and the bottom leads to where eventually Lyron's clinic will be, and also the Sparrows District, which is where many of the middle class families will live, or most of the families, majority of the population lives in the Sparrows District. I didn't mean to name these districts after birds, the Ravens District, Peacock's District, and Sparrows District. It kind of just happened because I was trying to figure out what name I should give Enya, where Enya lives, that district. And then Peacock came up right away in my mind, and I couldn't get rid of that idea. So I went with Peacock, and then at that point, I have to name district after a bird. So I named it the Sparrows District because where I live, I see sparrows all the time. I live in New York City, but there's also pigeons, but I felt like some people don't like pigeons, or they think of them as like flying rats. I like pigeons. They're cute. They're cute. But sparrows, I definitely see more sparrows where I live in particular. So I said Sparrows District. And sparrows are cute. Except the sparrows here, I have an air condition like sticking out, so a part of it is outside the house. And they always like land on the air condition, and they always mate on top of it. So it's very strange. But it's nature, so I just find it funny. At the entrances of all of Rodona, there will be a stables. It just makes sense if you're a visitor, you're visiting Rodona, maybe you're coming by horse. So you have to put your horse somewhere, and it just makes sense that it's at the entrance. And next to, on the bottom left, will be the warehouse district. So that's where like people store stuff, or stores, or like not stores, like the city stores stuff. Just put it there. I saw it on one person's map, and I was like, I'm gonna add a warehouse district. And above the warehouse district is the market district, where people can do groceries. I think I already mentioned that. I'm repeating myself. One thing I didn't include is the fashion district, which I said I would include. It didn't make sense to have like a whole area just for fashion. I know there's like near Penn Station, there's the fashion district. But for Rodona, I just felt like it, in fact, there could be maybe people who own shops in the Howler Circle, markets, stuff like that. And I did end up moving Lyron's clinic to the Sparrows District. It also makes more sense because a majority of people live in the Sparrows District, so it's very easy for them to go to Lyron's clinic instead of it being all the way over there. But of course, it would have been close to the Ravens District, which people there also need doctors, probably more so than the Sparrows District. And yeah, so I created the long houses or buildings for the Ravens District, which are kind of like apartments, I imagined. They are multiple families live in those buildings, and really the Vyron's Tongue is kind of the largest building, probably the richest in the Ravens District. Yeah, but they are in the Ravens District because they are a house of ill dispute, or what is that saying? Anyway, we'll be visiting the Vyron's Tongue in From Ashes eventually. So I also included like a park area in the Peacock District because, of course, if you're a richer family in a gated community, of course they have their own park. So I included like a little park area with a fountain in the center where like the children of the families can like play. And yeah, and drawing the trees was really difficult. Part of the reason was, I think, because I was working in a reddish hue background. Eventually I do change the background to like a yellowish orange brown background just to see a better, just to imagine the map better, because how many maps do you see that are like red or this kind of red? Not many, I assume. So I eventually do change it to like a yellowish orange, just to like simulate old aged paper, even though if the map was made currently it would not be aged, it would be more like an ivory color, but I think aged paper has like a charm to it. So I went through a lot of colors to find the perfect color for the aged paper, and I think I did change it a couple of more times after, but it definitely did help when I was drawing the trees. It just helped me better visualize what like how it would look in the end. I never work on like a stark white canvas. Even when I'm making the webcomic, I always change it to like another color. Part of the reason is because working on a white canvas just hurts my eyes, and I rather have like it be like somewhat like muted in the back. It's just more pleasant for drawing. And as you see through the time lapse, I am putting lines to indicate where the paths are. I erase most of these lines later on because they don't look great, but it does help me figure out like how the horses will be traveling along the routes, because you would have paths. You have here we have roads for cars there. Then they would also have roads for horses and carriages. And of course, like, people would walk on the roads. I mean, I imagine most people like cut through like parks and stuff, but you need roads. And I did add the path to the bottom from the bottom, and that'll go to the right, and that'll go to Duke Bergen's estate, since I did close off the path on the right next to the school. So this path also I kind of erased. Well, kind of. I'm looking at the map right now. I didn't really erase it. It was mostly the paths in the city that were really bothering me how they look. So I did include a training ground kind of last minute. I was supposed to include it earlier, but I forgot. And it was going to be next to the school, but after some thought, it felt like kind of weird, because this is a training ground not only for like potential knights, but also for the Rodona guards where they can like go and train. So yeah, so it kind of felt weird putting it next to the school. So I put it in the warehouse district because that's kind of like out of the way. Of course, I included the river on the left, Red Cap River, which it'll be eventually called. So this is currently how far I am with the map. I've done some coloring. I've currently done all the structures in the map. It's just now making it more look like a map, because right now it just looks like a piece of paper, just what a map is. But just adding like the coloring to any of the important buildings. I'm gonna add some shading here and there, like where grass patches will be, like near this fountain. I have to color this area, which is like near the forest area, and which is the camera's having a trouble focusing, and just label where these paths go to. The only thing is, I don't know where this path would go to. This just goes like down. I think I'm just gonna label this path and this path, because this path can lead to like other places to Bergen. This path will lead to Duke Bergen's estate. This one will lead to the capital city of Lulavoy, and then this one will lead to the forest, I'll say. I might change the colors here and there, because might make it, I mean, I want to make it brown. I don't want to like make it like all colored, but I think I'll stick with like oranges and reds. But I might change the color of the river a little bit. Let's talk about the colors of this map. The map coloring bothered me the most. The layouts were fine to a certain extent. It took time, because I had to like figure out where everything is. That took time. The coloring was really hard, because I wanted a light brown, orange, yellow hue map, like yellow ochre, but it just looked really weird. I was inspired by some maps I saw like online where it was like only one color basically, but it just didn't look right to me. I think it's just my drawing style doesn't fit that mold, or maybe, yeah, I think it's my drawing style just doesn't fit it, or maybe it looked fine and I'm just overthinking it. But I like color, so eventually what I did was I changed the hue of the river or the water, because I put each color with its own layer, like the water was its own layer, the buildings were their own layer, and I changed that at first. So I changed it to like a desaturated blue, and I was like, that looks so much better already. So then once I got the river color sorted, that's when I changed like the trees, the grassy areas. I changed that to like a desaturated green, and I'm like, this already looks like 20 times better. Like, what the hell? It already looks so much better. And then that's when I started changing the colors of everything. The buildings ended up getting more of like a reddish orange tint. And yeah, it just looked so much better with the color change. Then came the second hardest part, the farming area. At first, I just put like kind of a yellow blob down just so it just like represented the farm area. There was no like concrete area. It didn't look great. I tried hatching over it, didn't look great. It just didn't look right. Eventually, you'll see in the final result, I did like put like a rectangle and say this is like a farming area. You could see in the final image, it looks better than what I was doing right now. Last minute, I decided the map needed a border because it kind of felt weird that the map was just extending to the ends of the pages. So I created this like circle, like this design, like curves and stuff. I ended up not really liking it against the map. It just looked kind of busy, is the best way I can say it. It just didn't look right. So I scrapped that idea. I went with a simpler border, so like a gold border, and I put stars on the corners. And I think that just looks so much better. And I think the stars just add so much because like nature is a big part of From Ashes, so I think like the nature, the sky, everything, just having the stars there is like a nice touch. I think it better represents what From Ashes is than the squiggles. So once I added the border, I had to shrink the map a little bit so it goes within the border of the frame. But that also meant like there was going to be the paper background, the canvas color was in the back, and it kind of looked weird. So I ended up just coloring in outside just to make it like blend in better with the map itself. And you'll see in the video that I moved like the corner grungy pieces to the inside. I probably shouldn't have done that. If it's like a map, it's gonna be grungy on the corners. I did add that back in when I was coloring it, coloring the edges and shading it outside, but overthinking at its best. And then last minute, I forgot to include the title of the map. How would you know what this is a map of if I don't say what city it's for? So I created kind of like a scroll design, similar to what the legend key looks like. I know I didn't include it in the time lapse, me making it. When I do like the final look over, I'll zoom in, but it's similar to that. And I just include, and I can reuse this both every asset for other maps. So I created a scroll like outcome, and then I just put Rodona in it. And at first, because the scroll is kind of squiggly, and just having Rodona straight look weird, so I tried messing around with the wave. What is it actually called? It's filter distort wave. I was messing around with that. It was just a little too much wave. So at the end, I just took the text tool and kind of like moved one corner to like make it slant a little bit, and it looks fine. So that is all for now. Let us actually look at the map and I can explain kind of more story things in a more close-up way. So this is the final map of Rodona. So as you see, it's kind of similar to what the draft looks like. There are some like differences, particularly of like there's no garden, a really big garden area in Sparrow's district, but it looks pretty much the same, essentially. So let's start. Where should we start? Let's start over here. Let's start with the. Oops. Let's start with not me making any mistakes. Yeah. Let me have this big red thing. So this is the eventual border of the map. It's kind of pixelated because it's so small. But I went with a star gold border. I just think it matches the map really well. And then here we have the key, which is all the important places to the story. So obviously there's areas missing, like a butcher's shop, a grocery shop where you would find like fruits, vegetables, stuff like that, fashion. But these are areas that are important to the story, or like they get mentioned enough that I have to include it. So of course we have Valentine household, that's the main character's house, the Winking Horse, Frosty Fables, Petals and Blossoms, the Wordsmith, Fountain of Frecky, Rodona Clinic, Wildflowers Emporium, Trinkets and Baubles, Dragon's Trove, the Wyvern's Tongue, Gnome River School, Temple of St. Laurent, Main Guardhouse, Training Grounds. So some of these have like creative names, and some of them are just kind of like Rodona Clinic. They just say what they are. And I feel like it fits because, you know, Rodona Clinic is a clinic, and I feel like you wouldn't want like a fancy name. And I felt like Lyron wouldn't name his clinic anything fancy. It would just say Rodona Clinic to be very clear. And then you have like the main guardhouse, that's pretty clear too. Training grounds, clear. Some of these names also, particularly Fountain of Freki and Temple of St. Laurent, have history behind the names, which we'll go over in From Ashes when we get to that point. But for now, those are the names of the buildings that are important to the story. So we'll start with number 1, which is Enya's house. And we can talk about the Peacock District while we're here. So Enya's house is kind of like lower left of the Peacock District. I thought it would be nice if it was like close to an entrance so it's easy to get out for Enya. And yeah, so she doesn't have like the biggest house in the neighborhood. Definitely these two houses at the top are big, but she has a pretty big house. Lyron and Eloisa make a pretty good amount of money. I mean, Lyron's like a well-known doctor in Rodona, and he's a high mage, which I haven't mentioned in From Ashes yet, so that's a little secret between us. But he's a high mage, so he's pretty well off. And Eloisa's job gives her quite a bit of money too, and she's well off too. So they have a house in a nice neighborhood, and there's the garden that they can go hang out in. And yeah, so not much to say about Peacock District. It's just a residential area for the richer class. So we can go to the Howler Circle. So if Enya was to go to Howler Circle, she could take this path right here, go up and go to the left, and then maybe go down here to go here. She can go, or she can just go straight and then go down to go to Winking Horse. But I imagine she doesn't really want to go to near the temple, so she would probably take the path down. Or she can come down here, go to Sparrow's District, and cut through the pond to get to Howler Circle. But here's Howler Circle, and here we have the Winking Horse, which is the biggest building in Howler Circle. It's basically where it's an inn, so it has to be pretty big. This here is just some shops. I don't really have a name for them. They're just there. There's a lot of shops in Howler Circle. Not all of them will be important to the story, so I didn't name them. But the Winking Horse, this is a good question. What is this? This is Petals and Blossoms. I switched Petals and Blossoms and Frosty Fables because in the story, Enya goes to Petals and Blossoms. She sees this first before she sees Frosty Fables, so I ended up putting it closer to her house, so it makes more sense that she sees this first. And then Frosty Fables is across, next to the Winking Horse, which is kind of strange that it's next to a tavern when it's an ice cream place with a lot of children, but it is what it is. And then next to that is the Wordsmith. And yeah, and once you get your books, you can go eat some ice cream at Frosty Fables. They also serve coffee, so you can drink coffee there too. So yeah, this is Howler Circle. Howlers because Bergen is, their mascot is a wolf, so Howler, howling like a wolf, which makes my naming of Peacock's District, Raven's District, and Sparrow's District kind of weird when it's named after birds, but we're just going to let that pass. Raven's District came first, and then I couldn't get rid of the name Peacock's District from my mind, and then Sparrow's District had to be Sparrow's District. So we have the Fountain of Freki, which is in the middle of Howler Circle, and a little hint of who Freki is. If you Google Odin's wolves, that'll give you some insight. That's where I got the inspiration from, and Freki's gonna have his own story. But that's my little spoiler or hint. So next to Howler Circle is the Craftsman's District. This is where like traders, blacksmiths, people like that work and have shops. So we have Wildflower's Emporium, which has its apothecary. They have a lot of ingredients for like medicines, potions, stuff like that. Then we have I don't remember if this is Fleur's or yeah. So then we have Fleur's shop, Trinkets and Baubles. As I said, it has like trinkets and baubles, a lot of like knickknacks and stuff, and she has a side business which we'll discuss later. This is Dale's shop, number 10. That's Dragon's Trove. He makes jewelry. At first I was going to make him a blacksmith, but I made him a jeweler instead, just for funsies. And these buildings over here, I don't know what they are. I needed to put something there. They could be houses. People could live here. They could be like extra stores or something. And then below that is the market district. So this is where people can get their groceries and stuff. And yeah, butcher shop and stuff like that. Not much to say there. It just made sense to put craftsman and market district next to Howler Circle, because even people like go to Howler Circle, they can like go to the grocery store too, or go get some swords or jewelry. And then below that is the warehouse district, which is where people will store stuff. Is it very obvious that I'm trying not to repeat what I said in the voiceover? Because I feel like it is. So the warehouse district, I saw this on other people's maps and I thought it was a good idea, because I feel like there would be an area where you would just have, where people would just store their stuff. I mean, where I live, there's like a whole street of just filled with storage places. So the warehouse district makes sense to me. And then next to the warehouse district is the training grounds. So I already messed up my number order already, but that's fine. And the training grounds is kind of out of the way. As I said, it was going to be next to the school, but I changed my mind when I realized Verdona Knights would also, not Verdona Knights, Verdona Guards will also be training, so it just made sense that it's a little away from the school for safety reasons too. And we'll go to the right and then we'll go back up to the school. So we have stables here. It's next to one of the entrances, and we'll go over the entrances when I a little later. We'll stick with the inside of Rodona first. So stables here for when people come in, travelers, weary travelers can put their horse here, take a little walk, go to the Howler Circle and go to the Winking Horse. Or if they're not a drinker, they could just go to Frosty Fables and get some ice cream. And I have this building at all the entrances too, next to the stables. I imagine maybe like a guard works there to like watch people as they enter and leave Rodona. To the right, we have Sparrow's District and where Lyron's clinic is. So close to where Anya's house is. So it's a short walk, maybe 20 minutes to a walk to get here. And I just imagine him, like, he loves his family so much and he has to be near them. So he wouldn't have work so far away, all the way in the Craftsman's District. And also, like, people here can easily access him and go to the doctor. And he's also close to an entrance, so people can come to the entrance to here to see him. So this is Sparrow's District. These are houses. Maybe there are shops in here. Maybe there's like a little restaurant. Even like when you look at your city, even large residential areas, there may be like a deli somewhere. So we have the school behind the Peacock's District. I ended up putting a gate around the school because when I decided to put the Owl Wing Gardens above here, I was thinking, what happens if the students try to like sneak out and go to the gardens? And that's when I thought, okay, maybe they need a gate or like a wall next to around the school. So that's why there's a wall. That was my logic. And even in here, at least the public schools near me, all their area is pretty gated. Like there's the building, and then the playground is all gated, so it just made sense that this would also be the same. So that's where most of the people's children go to school. So the school's a little bigger, almost as big as the temple. I mean, the temple has this extra area, but it's bigger than the guardhouse. But I also imagine the school to have like a library inside, an area where people can like do research and stuff, like maybe research history. It's not only a school to like teach children, it's a school where people in the area can also visit to access their resources. So Owlwing Garden, I went over. Little park area. Cities have parks. I mean, New York City has Central Park, Battery Park. So it just makes sense that to include a park in the city. And this area was like, I needed to put something in this area. And I thought a park would look nice. And a little lake that people can like visit, and maybe like you go on dates here. It's like a little nice little garden. Here, number 13, we have the temple. And the temple has its own garden with a statue in the middle, which I imagine will be Sinan, who is like their savior. She's like the embodiment of dawn magic and who they worship. Her and the creator. Yeah, so I imagine like a large statue of Cynan here, garden, temple, where paladins live in the back. Because I imagine the temple would provide housing for the paladins. But maybe they would have houses somewhere else if they wanted to. So next to the temple is the guardhouse, which is the main guardhouse for the Rudona guards. So we have Rudona knights, which are under Duke Bergen. Imagine them as like, well, like knights in medieval time, they were like nobles, right? They were treated well. Whereas like the guards are like foot soldiers, essentially. So much lower. I don't know if that's a good explanation, but they guard the city, so they deal with like theft, robbery within the city, whereas like the knights would deal with like any wars are happening, any attackers, invaders. That's where the knights will come in. So yeah, we have the main guardhouse where people can also complain about like their neighbors if they're making too much noise, or report any stolen stuff. And again, here's another entrance, and we have another stables. So up here, oh, I didn't mention there's an entrance here, and stables. The stables look a little different because I didn't have space to do an L shape. So here we have the Ravens District, and 11 is the Wyvern's Tongue. And the Ravens District is mainly for people who are not as well off. You would consider this like lower class, much poorer, and these larger houses, these are not really houses, they're buildings where multiple families will live, maybe in the same room. And we have the Wyvern's Tongue in the center. So let's go to the outside, the outer outskirts. So you'll notice that there's like these houses on the outskirts. These are people who they're in Rodona, but they just live outside. Maybe it's cheaper, and living in the city is expensive. I mean, even here in like real life, living in a city is expensive. So a lot of people live right outside the city. So same thing with these people. They just live outside rather than inside. And you'll notice I didn't include anybody on this side just because there's no entrance on this side. So if they needed to like get into the city quickly, if they they lived on this side on the right, they would have to walk a great distance to like get to an entrance, right? So I just included houses on the top because I don't think anybody would live on the side. So yeah, so these are just houses. They're not farmhouses. They're just like little villages outside of the city. And this road leads to the Basilica and Venrilis. So Basilica is the House of Cynan. So it's like it's like the Vatican here. That's the similarity I'll put. So that's where the biggest temple in Lulavoy is. And that road will lead to the Basilica. And also if you go that way, it'll lead to Venrilis, which is the royal capital of Lulavoy, where the royal family lives. So that's north of Rudona and Bergen. And then we're starting to see farmland now. And then these houses have their own like farm. And yeah, and then they're next to, so I made all the farms next to the river because that's where they can easily get water. These people, they have to walk a great distance to get water. These families are right next to it. And yeah, and we have Redcap River, which runs through Redcap Forest. And the name comes from mushrooms because gnomes live in Redcap Forest. And the gnomes in From Ashes are mushroom shaped. So I thought it would be fitting. And there's another story for why it's called Redcap Forest. And then we have the sign at the top, Rodona. And you'll notice there's like kind of these lines to make it look weathered a little bit. And I did the same with the key. I did these lines to make it look a little weathered and give it texture. And I added like rips in them and burn marks just to make it on brand because Enya does have fire magic. I thought it was fitting for the scrolls to have like burn marks and rips to make it look more aged too. This scroll right here, I'm gonna make you realize it too. The paper doesn't really fold correctly if you notice. Like there should be, it's not right. And I didn't notice it until I was like done coloring, and I'm now too lazy to actually fix it. It doesn't bother me too much, but I thought you should notice it because there should be like a line here because that should be where one flap is, and then there should be another flap here. It's not right, but now you know. I messed up the scroll and I was too lazy to fix it. And that's going to be on every map, that mistake, and I'm not ashamed of it. So here we have a little watermill, so I thought it would be appropriate to include a watermill, as I was doing some research and I felt like, and I think a lot of areas will have watermills. I mean, when you play Skyrim, that first village you visit, there's a watermill on the left. So an area to process grains. And then here we have more houses. These 2 people, only 2 people here. And I named it Outer Rodona. And then only 2 people here. They were going to have land, but I went against that idea just because they're kind of far from the river. That's a long walk. So maybe this guy works at the watermill. And maybe this guy, I don't know. Maybe he also works at the watermill. Or maybe he just likes living outside of town and like his own area. So then this road, so to the left of this road is Redcap Forest. This is just another way to get there. When I draw the full map of Rodona, I just imagine Redcap Forest to like encompass this area, and then it could lead to other areas of Rodona. Because in the story, at least right now, I don't have any area to visit directly south of Rodona. To the west, yes, but south, no. So it'll lead to Redcap Forest and then lead to the rest of Rodona. To the right, when the path goes to the right, we have more villages outside. This path goes to Dukebergen's estate. So you take this path and you can go to Dukebergen's estate, which is, I imagine, like a 45-minute to an hour carriage ride. Walking would take you a long time. And I have to take that into account because I have one character who's afraid of horses, so I need her to walk. So I need to take into account how long it would take her to walk. And now my hair is getting in the mic. Hopefully the sound is okay because I've been recording for 30 minutes already. And I don't want to redo this like I did the voiceover. I did the voiceover 3 times actually. First time, I didn't like how it turned out. Second time, the static. Third time, hopefully that works. So finally we have a compass, like every great map should have, to indicate what's north, west, east, south. Yeah, not much to say. It's a compass. And I'm going to reuse this compass. I don't know if I'll change like the coloring when I reuse it. I like how it came out. Like, it looks cool. And funny enough, the lettering took me a long time. I went through a lot of letters before I got to this one. At first I wanted to look kind of scripty, but the problem was it was either the S or the E. I believe it was the S. The S didn't look like an S. Like, it looked like the scripty S, but I wanted to be more clear because maybe not everyone would know what a script S looks like. It just looked different from the others. So I went with a more, I think this is Infel English SC regular. I got it from Google Fonts if you're interested. I just think it's like a nice medieval looking font. Yeah, I think the other fonts are Poor Richard though. And then these numbers are the Old English font. Howler Circle is Poor Richard, but I think, yeah, the numbers are Old English Text MC regular. That's that font I used. So I kind of try to use more like oldie looking fonts. This is Poor Richard also, so yeah. Poor Richard also works. I like the Impel. It looks nice. It makes it look old. Is the best way I can put it. But yeah, this is the map. Oh, and there's a forest here too. I didn't mention that. I imagine this is like part of Dukebergen's estate, so I didn't bother naming it. It's basically like an extension because he has a big estate. He's the Duke, so of course he has a big estate. So this is the final map. I'm really happy with how it came out. I'm really happy I went with the colors because it looks so good with the colors, with the green, the blue, and stuff like that. I like the layout, and I can't wait to like actually use this map when I'm scripting and I get an idea of like how long it takes Enya to get to the Ravens district from her house. And it's just very helpful. I think if you're making a story, even if you don't make like a finished map like this, just having like a idea of where everything is in your story, like where the character's house is in relation to another character's house, it's just very helpful with like planning and stuff. So I think maps are really helpful and they're really fun. I kind of want to do this map traditionally and like have it framed somewhere. I have a frame of like a cloth image of Middle Earth. It's on cloth, and I can go like right next to it. I'm gonna have a lot of maps. I have more map ideas. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoyed seeing me make a map. Let me know what things you would include in your map, or if you have made a map, let me know, and what things I should have included in the map that I didn't. I would love to know what I should have included, because I definitely feel like I'm missing something sometimes when I stare at this map. But yes, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.